Welcome back to This Week in Creationism. It's episode number 39. I'm your host, Joel Duff, and here I take a look at the headlines in creationism from the past week. Today we're just going to talk about one article, and it's by Ken Ham on the Answers in Genesis website, in which he is encouraging his followers to follow him to the truth. Yes, follow him to alternative social media sites. Yes, I admit, I chose a clickbaity title. Just couldn't help myself. Ken Ham has yet to tell any truths. Notice the asterisk there. I'll explain what I mean in just a moment. Now, if you haven't guessed what my title alludes to yet, I'm going to keep you in the dark for just a couple minutes. Hang with me. We'll get to it. This is my teaser, your reason for sticking around. Here's the very short blog post by Ken Ham that showed up yesterday on the Answers in Genesis website. Are you following us? In an effort to reach even more people around the world with the message of biblical authority and the gospel, we've been working to expand our reach on social media. And that means you can follow us on more social media platforms for exciting behind-the-scenes photos, announcements of what's coming next, videos our social media team is producing, faith-affirming articles and blogs, and so much more. So where can you follow us? All right, let's check out the list. Where are they expanding to? They're already on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, all right, sort of the big social media sites. Where else might they be going to in order to expand their reach, in order to spread the gospel? Let's find out. So there we go. YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. They've been on all those for pretty much as long as all of those have existed. A little dabbled in Pinterest, but now here's the new ones. Here's where they're reaching out. Here's where they're going to gather a new audience and spread the gospel even more. MeWe, which is a knockoff of Facebook, and MeWe's been around for quite a while as well. Gab, Getter, which affectionately is known as Gutter for good reason, if you've ever done any searches on that site. Parler, TikTok, I'm not going to talk so much about TikTok, and Truth Social. All right, what do, let's say MeWe, Gab, Getter, Parler, and Truth Social all have in common? I think you could lump them all together, say they're distinctly alt-right sort of, emphasis. The clientele, all right, would be a very right of center politically, and certainly right of center maybe socially as well. Is this where they're going to find a broad new audience? I don't think that's what's going on. Now, although Ken Ham likes to say, in an effort to reach more people, but I think what he's really saying is, in an effort to reach the same people we've already reached, or the same type of people that we attract, we're going to go where the people are going. And we perceive that there's going to be a movement out of Facebook. It doesn't take a lot of perception to figure out that a lot of people are leaving Facebook. You just look at Facebook's stock price recently, right? They're bleeding, all right, users. And of course, we all know what's happening to Twitter, concerns about Twitter. And despite the whole free speech thing, and some Christians think that Twitter will be a better place for them than not, but there's sort of an equal mix there, right? So a lot of skepticism. And YouTube, for which many people complain about the censorship that's there, right? So I think what Ken Ham has is he has his finger on the pulse of his audience, all right? The people that he wants to communicate. In other words, the people that are donating money to him, the people that are continuing to support Answers in Genesis, right? Where are his most devoted followers at right now? And I think what he's hearing is that many of them are in that group of people that are saying, we need to get out of, all these popular social media sites that are corrupt and woke and so forth. And remember, he's created this sort of vibe himself, right? He's a participant in creating this attitude, all right, toward modern social media, enterprises. But nonetheless, he sees his audience talking about that shift and wanting to go to sites that are more, what are perceived as more friendly to them, their ideas. And so I don't think he's really opening himself up to the world, right? He's not seeking out new audiences. He's just trying to make sure that he stays relevant with his particular audience and make sure they develop a social media presence at the places where his audience, his primary audience, is going to end up congregating anyway. And so I almost think it's the opposite, effect of what is being described here. Now, what I'm interested in looking at, what I'm going to show you now is whether that's a good long-term strategy. I think that it is a long-term strategy. Certainly in the short term, it's not reaching more people, right? He's not expanding the scope of Answers in Genesis reach, at least in the present. So if he wants to make an argument this is a 10-year plan or 5-year plan, fine. But it's not a 6-month plan, and let me show you why. So let's look at some of these sites. And let's look at their presence on some of these sites. And then let's talk about other young Earth creationist organizations and what their strategies are in terms of social media marketing. Actually, let's start there. So I created this graphic for a blog that I wrote a little over a year ago. So this is data from 2021, actually early 2021. I did a quick check of a few of these different locations and looked at user numbers, and they're all a little bit higher than the numbers you're seeing here, but the relative proportion compared to each of these organizations is very similar. So I think this will give you a good snapshot of the relative power, all right, the relative reach that young Earth creationist organizations have in various social media platforms. So here you have Answers in Genesis, and I've split out Ken Ham because he is a entity in himself, all right? He's a charismatic leader, and he has his own followers even separate from Answers in Genesis. But because the two are inextricably, entwined, that gives extra oomph to that organization overall, because you have multiple different ways you're reaching people. Now you've got Institute for Creation Research, that's ICR. You have Creation Ministries International, CMI. All right, those are the three biggies. All right, those are the three big apologetics ministries. Then you have Biblical Science Institute, which many of you may not be familiar with, but that's Jason Lyle's personal endeavor that he created when he left the Institute for Creation Research. So he was a primary researcher for Institute for Creation Research, and really one of their probably best apologist speakers there. And then he left, created his own institute, in which he's really the sole runner of that and producer of material. You have Is Genesis History, which is a I don't want to call it an organization, but it's a few people that developed a very widely viewed documentary on young Earth creationism, and they have since sort of developed out from that a social media presence. Creation Today, which is Eric Hovens, the son of Kent Hovind, that's his ministry. Really the ministry he took from his father, when his father was in jail. And then you have Core Academy of Science, which I always like to throw in. That's Todd Wood's organization. You can think of him as a freelance young Earth creationist. All right, and I'm not going to go over all these numbers, but I'll just point out some trends here. Obviously, Answers in Genesis is the 10-ton gorilla in the room in terms of the number of eyes that see Answers in Genesis is like all the others combined, basically add up to Answers in Genesis. So they have the most influence. They have the most Twitter followers. They have the most Facebook followers. They're fairly big into Instagram. And then YouTube, 175,000 subscribers, and they have over 1,000 videos now. And that's actually gone way up even since I last looked at it. And then ICR and Creation Ministries International are kind of similar organizations, and this kind of fits their budgets too. I've also looked at their budget information, and their overall social media presence kind of is similarly reflected in the total operating budgets of these various organizations. BSI, you'll notice, has 91,000 Facebook followers. And so Jason Lisle he has a very strong following. And when he left ICR, he was able to quickly sort of establish himself, even though he's a one-man operation, essentially. And what Creation Today does is they do lots of video clips. And so they have a large YouTube presence. You'll notice that in Is Genesis History has 102,000 YouTube subscribers. So they've used that film that they produced and the one they have coming up, the second installment, to their advantage in terms of their video production. And then Core Academy of Science lags way, way behind in terms of its social media presence. I think that Todd Wood's influence on Young Earth Creation far outweighs his, I guess I'll say, his social media presence and other things, right? So he looks small, but I think some of his ideas and his influence he influences other thinkers in Young Earth Creationism. All right, so that's sort of the lay of the land. That's where it is presently. And so I'm going to emphasize these numbers again. We're talking tens of thousands to hundreds of thousands of followers. A typical tweet by Ken Ham is going to get hundreds of likes, if not thousands of likes, and hundreds of retweets, and 20 to 500 comments. All right, so they're very active. Now, let's take a look at these alternative social media wannabes, all right, wannabe sites, especially these alt-right ones that have been set up. A lot of these, Getter, Parler, and of course Truth Social, are all kind of vying for the same audience. They're all, started by, I don't want to characterize this. They've all been begun by, I'll call them followers of Trump. All right, and so they have a similar flair to them. So Getter, which has been around a little while, right? Several years. I mean, long before Truth Social came along, and created, a little bit of news for a while, but I think it's pretty stagnant since then. Here we are. Here's Answers in Genesis, right? Now, let me go back here real quick. So remind him, he's showing here's links to all these different social media accounts, right? So Ken Ham is tweeting this out, and he's Facebooking it out, and he's putting it on his blog, right? And so you can bet that probably 10,000 people at least have looked at this. All right, people that are really devoted followers of Ken Ham have looked at this particular post. And it's like, oh, here's where I can get other ways to get information from Ken Ham. Of course, they're already on Facebook or Twitter or something like that. But nonetheless, let's see how many have migrated over and what is their presence. So here we are, Getter. We have Answers in Genesis. Here's their account, and you'll see that they have 45 followers. All right, they began in February of 2022. Most of these accounts either started in August 2022 or early 2022. And then there are some individuals I'm going to show you that had accounts that are a little bit older than that. All right, 45 total followers. Here's Ken Ham. Now, Ken Ham has been, he joined in 2021, and he has managed to get 2,400 Getter followers. All right, disregard the 63.9 thousand total followers, because Getter has they have some accounting method where they sort of take all of some other social media accounts, and they kind of import everything, and they call those your followers, even though those people can't really follow you on Getter unless they get an account and so forth. So it's a way of making you think you have lots of followers, but you don't actually have that many followers. So 2,400, that's a really big number actually for Getter. But he barely posts, all right? And he has been posting some lately. So the same thing you'll see on Twitter, you'll see here. I mean, obviously, they probably have a platform where someone's not individually doing this. They probably have some piece of software that's like, hey, here's my post, and they set it up, and it goes out to all these different sites at the same time. All right, now we get to Truth Social. And here's Answers in Genesis. Answers in Genesis, August 2022. So August, September, October. Been around for 3 months. How many followers? 11 followers so far. I just checked now. I grabbed this screenshot yesterday, which was only hours after he posted this particular piece. I checked again today, so 24 hours later, and he has 14 followers. All right, 14 followers. Answers in Genesis. Now here's Ken Ham. Ken Ham also got an account set up at Truth Social, August 2022, and 2 followers so far. And he's now up to 7. So 5 people have followed him over to Truth Social. The Ark Encounter, 1 follower, and that's up to 3 followers today after a couple months. Now, let's contrast that with Nathaniel Jeanson. Now, Nathaniel Jeanson has been hyping his Truth Social account for a while now, at least several months. You can see he joined a couple of weeks earlier. Every one of his videos, he ends by talking about all the social media accounts you can find him on. And what's notable there is he doesn't mention he has a Twitter account. And sometimes doesn't mention he has a Facebook account, and he'll emphasize that he has a Getter account, a Gab account, Truth Social account. You know, you can find him in all these different locations. You can even find him on Rumble. And so he has been pushing the alternative social sites as like the place to find him, even though he still is actually pushing his material out on other more standard or popular platforms, and still getting a lot more hits to his popular platforms and barely any here. He posts everything here that he posts on his Twitter account, but he typically gets, even though he has 71 followers, he's typically getting like 1 like, or what, 1, truth like, or whatever they call them on Truth Social. All right, so he's truthed, several times. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention, because I have to do this. But my title said that Ken Ham has asked us to follow him, but has yet to tell us the truth. All right, and that's just I'm just making fun of the fact that he's on Truth Social and he has yet to post any truth. All right, he has yet to post a single truth on his account. All right, so Ken Ham is yet to tell us the truth here. Jensen's Getter account, he's got a solid 322 followers there, and like I said, he's been promoting Getter for quite a while. He was an early adopter, so there he is way back in 2021. Has been there for over a year. And again, though, despite 322 followers, he's getting like a couple likes and maybe 1 re-getter or whatever they call them there. All right. And so it's not exactly an expansive resource in terms of getting information out. Nathaniel Jeanson even has a Rumble account. Rumble is a competitor to YouTube. And Rumble notably has gone public recently. I believe it's a Canadian company, and it's definitely connected to Truth Social and the digital acquisition company that is working with Trump to buy and take Truth Social public. So there's some relationship there. I've never really understood exactly what, but if you go to Rumble and you just do searches of, you're going to get a litany of, I think, what you probably expect you would find there, which is everything that's been banned probably by YouTube. You'll find over and over and over and over and over again on Rumble. All right. Yeah. And Answers in Genesis, they have a Rumble account. You can see like this post right here, which is a recent video they posted on YouTube. And here on Rumble, they have 31 views, 8 Rumbles so far after 3 days. Whereas their YouTube one has, several thousand views, right? And it has, umpteen number of comments on it. So not making much impact here on Rumble. Now, Calvin Smith. All right. who's the CEO of Answers in Genesis Canada, they've had a Rumble account for quite a while, and he's been really pushing his videos out on there. They're also on YouTube, but he makes more of an effort to deal with Rumble, and I think a couple other alternative social media sites. And so he generally gets a little more attraction from that. And then there's MeWe, which is it's essentially a Facebook knockoff that was created quite a while ago as sort of this safer place. Well, that's the way they promote it, safer place in which they don't have ads, or at least it's very ad reduced. And so, but of course, they don't have any way of producing a whole lot of income. And so it's kind of languished for a long time. They always get like a little uptick in more people going over there. I mean, I created an account probably 4 or 5 years ago. Every time Facebook has like an outage or, some major controversy comes up, then all of a sudden everyone's like, you got to get over to MeWe. And then, a whole bunch of people sign up, and then they find out that not enough of their friends are on there, and it's not as useful, and it's a little clunky and so forth. And then they just, they just abandon it. And so there are a lot of accounts at MeWe. There's just not a lot of activity there. Not a lot. I've joined all the different same groups that have the same titles they do on Facebook. And it's like, you're lucky to have one person post every week compared to 15 posts a day on Facebook. And it's the same characters. It's the same people who are just trying to propagate their stuff on there. And they can't get any kind of action there on MeWe. All right, so where does that leave us? Oh, yeah, Ken Ham also has a MeWe account, but he only has 35 followers so far. And he's had it for a couple months. Jeanson's had his for a couple years, I believe. And so Jeanson's been kind of an early adopter of the alternative social media sites. And so now that raises the question, something else I wanted to point out with this. So, because I kind of alluded at the beginning, I said, is Ken Ham really thinking that he's going to be expanding his influence this way? It's like, okay, we're expanding out into other social media platforms, and therefore we're reaching this broader audience. And like I said before, I don't think that he's really going to expand his reach. He's going to find the same people that are already followers of his on Facebook and Twitter. And I think the thing that he's anticipating is that some of them may, in the current climate, leave Twitter, leave Facebook, and therefore maybe migrate and find themselves on one of these alternative platforms, and they're going to be ready for them. And they're going to be ready to take them in. It's not a way of expanding the overall user base. And honestly, Answers in Genesis is, although they're an apologetics ministry, they're not really outreaching. Right? They're not out-facing. They're not trying to convince the person who's not a believer. They're mostly focused on maintaining the believers that they have and giving them cause and comfort to maintain their belief. And I know that they know they have stories of like so-and-so came by and saw the material and they read this and they were convicted, and they have conversion stories and so forth. And of course, there's going to be those that are going to be converted by their material from, converted to Christianity, not just young earth creationism. And so they would object to me saying they're not a really an outward-facing apologetics ministry. But I'm saying that on the whole, they're not. And the most important thing is maintaining that major donor base, the true follower that has real fervor, right? And the ones that have the real fervor are the ones that really soak up what Ken Ham says. And what Ken Ham has been telling them is that you need to fear, right, these large organizations. You need to fear these people that are trying to squelch your voice. You need to fear people that are censoring you and so forth. And so he's creating a fear of these traditional social media networks, and I'm not saying that there aren't bad things about them. There's plenty of difficult problems for social media companies, and plenty of things I don't like. But nonetheless, Ken Ham has a way of creating his most intense followers are the ones that are most likely to jump ship. Now, what I find interesting is, despite the talk you might hear, all right, despite somebody interviewing somebody on the news and it makes it sound like they're fed up with Twitter or fed up with Facebook, and they're going to go to one of these alternative sites, you can see that they're not really doing it. I mean, Ken Ham has contacted tens of thousands of his followers and given him the addresses, and you can count the number of people that so far have moved over to follow him on these other places on one hand. So this isn't going to be a huge rush. I think it's just a long-term plan. Now, going to the other social, this is just what Ken Ham's talking about. I'm talking about Answers in Genesis, but let me tell you that I did a quick search for Creation Research, Institute for Creation Research. I did a search for Creation Ministries International on Getter, on Gab, on Parler, on Truth Social, all right, and Rumble, and they're virtually not to be found on any of those different sources. And also, I've searched for notable names, within those organizations. And so, unless they're using other names that are not easy to find and not easily identifiable, they have not personally, gravitated to other social media outlets. And so they're in the same position that really everybody is in. All right. You can complain all you want about Facebook or Twitter or even TikTok now or Instagram. And you can say you want out and I'm not going to use this anymore. But so many people say that but don't ever follow up on it, because the reality is that, especially if you're into marketing, which Answers in Genesis, they need to reach a lot of people. They need to keep people interested. They need to have that contact all the time, right? You can't rely on paper newsletters anymore, right? You have to be touching people constantly, it's called in the marketing world. You have to have X number of touches per every couple days at least, and them seeing you all the time to keep it in the front of their brain so that they're remembering that, especially when it comes down to times to write a check or say, what do I want to give some money toward? What am I excited about? And so they rely on, like the Answers in Genesis. Are they going to abandon Facebook and Twitter and Instagram? Are they going to make some kind of socially responsible decision despite even though it would hurt themselves, they're going to leave? I doubt it. All right, they'll leave when they feel like there's enough people who have already left. And so in a way, what Ken Ham's doing is he's setting the stage. He's saying, follow me over here. Now I'm not moving yet. I'll duplicate everything. And as soon as enough of you follow me over here, I'll be able to abandon Facebook or Twitter. And of course, he'll write a big blog post and have a video about how they've gone woke, and I'm making this stand. I'm quitting Twitter. I'm quitting Facebook. But my bet is that by the time he does that, it's already because he's created a financially secure situation for himself and his organization, so that he can make that transition and then also pretend like he's doing it on some kind of moral grounds. Now, ICR, Creation Ministries International, Core Academy of Science, Biblical Science Institute, I don't see them making this move. And maybe Answers in Genesis, I think they're probably smart for doing this. And I think they're probably ahead of the game. The other ones should probably do this as well. I think they don't see any use in those other places. They recognize right now they're just not going to get much of a following. But you're not going to get a following if you don't start, if you don't have a site for somebody to follow, and you don't know what's going to be successful. I mean, Truth Social is probably going to collapse and disappear, especially if Trump moves back to Twitter. Because, Trump has said that Twitter is a cesspool and he would never come back. But of course, he's going to be enticed by the numbers, right? He knows just like Ken Ham does, that by truthing, You know, sure, it kind of looks like he's, being seen by thousands of people, but it's just thousands of people. When he was on Twitter, he was being seen by millions, if not 100 million people at a time. And he can't, I don't think he's going to be able to stay away from those numbers. It's going to kill him not to be able to have that kind of audience again. But the problem is he owns a ton of shares in Truth Social, he and his family, right? And so they have something to gain by making Truth Social something, at least making the stock price go up at some point so they can sell some of it. But as soon as he abandons Truth Social and he goes over to Twitter, there's not going to be anything holding up Truth Social. And all you have to do is read their Securities Exchange document that for starting Truth Social. And in that document, the proposers of to go public with Truth Social write right in there that the whole site is dependent on Trump. Trump's activity is the thing that is the draw. It's the reason why people will buy shares. And if he abandons it, then basically they warn investors that their entire investment will be likely lost if Trump is no longer there. So he does have a difficult decision to make. But I digress. Social media is as important of a marketing tool for young Earth creationists as it is for politicians and many other people and myself, right? Obviously, the only reason I joined Facebook and Twitter probably 8 years ago now was when I started my blog, right? I knew when I started writing my blog that the only way to have it seen was I have to have some way to market that blog. And so I had to create a Facebook account. So I created a personal Facebook account so I could create my blog Facebook account, created a Twitter account, right? And then later created this YouTube account, which you're watching right now. And I've chosen to do that versus Rumble for the obvious reason that if I posted all my videos on Rumble, you would not be seeing them. Nobody would be seeing them. And the particular audience that Rumble attracts is not going to be interested in my videos. So in a way, I am beholden, right, to these social media, these popular social media accounts. And that is the conundrum. It's for anyone who might find the social media, the people who run these social media platforms might find them morally repugnant, and you might not like the way the companies run, and yet you still find yourself dependent on them. So there we go. That's Ken Ham telling us that we need to follow him to the truth, to get the truth, although he hasn't told us any truths yet. But he has done some parlors and some gabs and a few getters, all right, for us. So if you want to join him in the gutter, and along with the cesspool of what that particular site comes with in terms of who you have to share that world with, then find him there. Now, right as of now, you're not going to get any different content that you would get if you were on Twitter or Facebook. I have yet to see anything posted by anything of Answers in Genesis that isn't simply an absolute duplicate copy of what they're putting on their other social media sites. So rest assured, you're not missing anything. I've taken the hit for you by looking them up and being forced to join these social media platforms, and therefore making it look like they have another user, but not really a user. That's it for me. That's episode 39 of This Week in Creationism. Hit like, subscribe, all those good things, and we will talk to you later. Bye-bye.